In the deepest dungeons of Greystone Fortress, where mercy never reached, a werewolf lay dying in silver chains. Everyone feared him. Everyone except the kitchen girl who fed him scraps. They say monsters live in the dungeons. And they're right. But the real monster isn't the one in chains, it's what humans become when they forget mercy. Anna Riverwood learned this the day she was sent to feed the werewolf prisoner. Everyone avoided this job. Everyone feared the chained beast with eyes like molten gold. But Anna? She saw something different. She saw suffering. Intelligence. A creature starving not just for food, but for kindness. For 6 months, she fed him. Not just stale bread, but real food. Not just water, but compassion. She talked to him, cared for his wounds, saw him as more than a monster. And then, the night before his execution, something impossible happened. The silver chains that held him for half a year shattered. And the wolf everyone feared transformed before her eyes. Anna Riverwood has nothing, no family, no future, just a job in the fortress kitchens and a task everyone else refuses, feeding the captured werewolf in the dungeons. She expects a monster. Instead, she finds intelligence in those golden eyes, suffering in those silver-burned wounds. Against every rule, every instinct, every warning about werewolves being soulless beasts, Anna begins to care. She brings better food, clean water, medicine for his wounds. She talks to him like he's a person, not an animal. And the wolf, this magnificent, dying creature, responds. He watches her like she's the only light in his darkness. He trusts her with his vulnerability. And when he's sentenced to execution, something impossible happens. The silver chains that held him for 6 months shatter. The wolf transforms. And standing before Anna is no beast, but Vincent Nightborn Alpha, king of the werewolves, betrayed and left to rot in human hands. Now Anna must choose. Return to her safe, small life, or flee with a werewolf king into a world where humans and wolves are enemies, where her kindness might be rewarded with a crown, or her death. But before we dive into this tale of transformation, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now, and tell me where you are watching from. Because if you miss what happens next, you'll regret it. Anna's first encounter with this wolf will make your heart race. And trust me, you don't want to miss the moment those golden eyes first looked into hers. Subscribe now. Let's begin. Anna Riverwood had learned long ago that being nobody meant doing the jobs nobody wanted. At 25, she'd spent most of her life in the kitchens of Greystone Fortress, scrubbing pots, chopping vegetables, and staying invisible. The fortress had raised her after her parents died in a border skirmish when she was 8. She wasn't a soldier, wasn't nobility, wasn't anything really. Just another orphan who earned her keep by keeping her head down and her hands busy. So when the head cook grabbed her arm that morning and said, "You're taking food to the prisoner in the dungeons," Anna didn't argue. She never argued, even though everyone knew what prisoner he meant. Even though the last 3 kitchen workers had refused the assignment outright, the werewolf. Anna's hands trembled as she descended the stone stairs, the wooden tray growing heavier with each step. The dungeons smelled of dampness and something else, something wild that made her heart race. Torches flickered against walls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. This was where mercy came to die, where the fortress kept the creatures it feared most. She'd heard the stories since childhood. Werewolves were monsters, soulless beasts who killed without remorse. The prisoner had been down here for months, chained and forgotten, waiting for death or madness, whichever came first. Anna reached the final step and froze. The cell stretched before her, and in its center, surrounded by shattered light and shadow, lay the wolf. He was massive, easily the size of a small horse, with fur so dark it appeared black, except where torchlight caught the deep gray beneath. Silver chains bound his hind legs and neck, the metal leaving angry burns where it touched his skin. His ribs showed through his coat, each breath visible, labored. But it was his eyes that stopped Anna's heart. Golden. Impossibly, brilliantly golden. Glowing in the darkness with an inner light that seemed almost otherworldly. And they were looking directly at her with an intensity that should have terrified her. She waited for the fear everyone said she should feel, for the instinct to run, to drop the tray, and flee back up those stairs. Instead, what hit her was something else entirely. Something that made her throat tighten, and her vision blur. Suffering. Not the mindless pain of an animal, but something deeper. Something that looked back at her from those golden eyes with an intelligence that was unmistakably, impossibly aware. He wasn't just a beast in chains. He was someone Someone who hurt, someone who'd been forgotten, someone alone. Anna approached the bars carefully, her feet moving before her mind could catch up. She knelt and slid the tray through the gap at the bottom, the stale bread and murky water suddenly seeming cruelly inadequate. The wolf watched her every movement, his head lifting slightly despite what must have been tremendous effort. Their eyes met again, and Anna felt something shift inside her chest, a recognition she couldn't name. The wolf didn't move toward the food. Even starving, even weak, he waited. Pride, she realized. He wouldn't show weakness in front of her, wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing how desperate he truly was. Anna stood slowly, backing away from the bars. "I'll come back tomorrow," she whispered, though she had no idea why she spoke to him, why she felt the need to make a promise to a creature who shouldn't understand. But as she climbed those dungeon stairs, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that those golden eyes had understood everything, and that terrified her more than any monster ever could. The second day, Anna brought the same stale bread and questionable water. The third day too. But on the fourth morning, as she watched the cook toss perfectly good meat scraps into the waste bin, something in her chest twisted painfully. She thought of those golden eyes, that visible suffering, the way his ribs pressed against his fur. No creature deserved to starve slowly, not even a monster. Her hand moved before she could think better of it, wrapping the meat in cloth and tucking it under the bread on the tray. Her heart hammered as she descended the stairs, certain someone would stop her, question her, discover what she'd done. But the dungeons remained silent, except for the echo of her footsteps. The wolf lifted his head when she appeared, and Anna could have sworn something flickered in those golden eyes. Surprise, maybe, or hope. She slid the tray through quickly, watching as he finally moved toward it, his movements still weak but slightly less labored than before. He paused when he uncovered the meat. His gaze snapped to her face, holding there for a long moment that made Anna's breath catch. Then he ate, and something about the careful way he consumed every scrap made her throat tighten. He knew. Somehow, impossibly, he understood what she'd risked. After that, Anna couldn't stop. Fresh water from her own canteen instead of the rust-tainted dungeon supply. An apple from the orchards. More meat, when she could steal it without detection. Each offering small, each one dangerous if discovered, and each one making the wolf grow fractionally stronger. 2 weeks in, Anna found an old blanket in the storage rooms, moth-eaten but serviceable. She stood at the cell bars for 10 minutes, arguing with herself. This was madness. He was a werewolf, a prisoner, probably a killer. The blanket wouldn't change anything, but she pushed it through the bars anyway. The wolf stared at it for so long Anna thought he wouldn't touch it. Then, slowly, he dragged himself toward it, chains scraping against stone. He sniffed it carefully before lowering himself onto its surface with what looked like profound relief. When he looked at her again, something in his expression made Anna's eyes burn. Gratitude. Clear and unmistakable. "You're welcome," she whispered. And that's when everything changed. Because talking to him felt natural, necessary, even. At first, just simple comments about the weather, about her day in the kitchens. She felt foolish speaking to an animal, but those golden eyes never left her face, tracking her every word with an attention that felt distinctly un-animal-like. So Anna kept talking. About the loneliness of being an orphan in a fortress full of people. About her dreams of someday leaving. Maybe opening a small bakery somewhere far away. About how she felt invisible, like she was just going through motions of a life that would never truly be hers. The wolf listened to everything. His ears would pivot toward her when she spoke. His head would tilt at certain words. Sometimes he made low sounds in his throat, not growls but something softer, almost conversational. "You understand me, don't you?" Anna asked one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. The wolf held her gaze, unblinking. Then, deliberately, he dipped his head once. A nod. Anna's breath left her in a rush. It should have terrified her, this confirmation, that the creature before her possessed intelligence far beyond what any wolf should have, that he'd been listening, understanding, knowing everything she'd confessed in the darkness of this dungeon. Instead, what she felt was something far more dangerous. Connection. For the first time in her lonely life, someone truly saw her. And the fact that he wasn't human at all somehow made it matter even more. "I have a question. Have you ever felt like an animal understood you better than people?" Anna knew something was wrong the moment she reached the bottom of the stairs. The wolf lay on his side, his body racked with violent tremors. Even from outside the bars, she could see the silver chains had tightened somehow, biting deeper into his flesh. The wounds where metal met skin weren't just burned anymore, they were infected, oozing and angry red against his dark fur. His golden eyes found hers, but they were glazed with fever, the usual brilliant intensity dimmed by pain that clearly consumed him. A low whine escaped his throat, and the sound shattered something fundamental in Anna's chest. She didn't think. Thinking would have stopped her, would have reminded her of every sensible reason why what she was about to do was absolute insanity. Instead, she dropped the tray and ran back up the stairs, her mind racing. The medical storage room near the kitchens, bandages, antiseptic tinctures, herbs with antibacterial properties. Her hands shook as she gathered supplies, stuffing them into a sack with the kind of desperate efficiency that came from pure terror. The keys to the cells hung on a hook at the top of the dungeon stairs. They were rarely used, nobody wanted to get close to the prisoners. Anna grabbed them, their weight suddenly feeling like destiny in her palm. Her heart threatened to break through her ribs as she descended again. As she sorted through keys with trembling fingers, as the lock finally clicked open, the sound echoed through the dungeons like thunder. She froze, waiting for guards to come running, for her world to end right here. Silence. Anna pushed the cell door open and stepped inside. Every instinct screamed at her to run. He was massive, even weakened. One snap of those jaws could kill her instantly. She'd be entering a cage with a predator, alone, with no one to hear her scream. But when she knelt beside him, basin of water and bandages in hand, the wolf's eyes met hers with something that looked almost like disbelief, as if he couldn't comprehend that she'd actually come inside, that she'd chosen to be this vulnerable with him. "I'm going to help you," Anna whispered. "Please don't make me regret this." She started with the worst wound, the one at his neck where the chain had eaten deepest. The wolf's entire body tensed when she touched the damaged skin, a growl building in his chest that made every hair on Anna's body stand on end. She waited, barely breathing, for him to strike. But he didn't. Slowly, deliberately, he forced himself to relax, to trust. Anna worked for what felt like hours, cleaning each infected wound with shaking hands. The antiseptic must have burned terribly. She could feel him flinch beneath her touch, but he never pulled away, never showed his teeth. He simply watched her with those golden eyes, enduring the pain because somehow he understood she was trying to help. When she finally finished bandaging the last wound, Anna sat back, exhausted. Her hands were stained with blood and antiseptic, her dress filthy from the cell floor. She should leave, should put distance between herself and this impossible situation. Instead, she found herself reaching out, her fingers trembling as they touched his fur for the first time. The wolf went completely still. Then, with obvious effort, he lifted his head and gently pressed his muzzle against her palm. The touch was feather-light, reverent, and it lasted barely a second before he lowered his head back to the blanket. But in that brief contact, Anna felt everything shift. This wasn't duty anymore. This wasn't even simple compassion. She cared about him. Deeply. Impossibly. In ways that made absolutely no sense, and would probably destroy her if anyone ever found out. Anna carefully gathered her supplies and left the cell, locking it behind her. But as she climbed the stairs, she knew the truth. She'd crossed a line tonight, and there was no going back. And that's when Anna basically became a supernatural vet without a license. Girl walked into a werewolf cell with some bandages and pure audacity. If you're sitting there thinking, "Anna, bestie, that's wild," hit that like button. And hey, if you'd also risk it all for a pair of golden puppy eyes, drop a comment below. No judgment here. We're all a little unhinged for the right supernatural romance. Anyway, back to the story. The dreams started 3 nights after Anna entered the cell. She found herself standing in a forest she'd never seen, moonlight filtering through ancient trees that seemed to whisper secrets in languages older than words. And there, moving through the silvered darkness, was a man. Tall and powerful, with black hair that fell past his shoulders and caught streaks of moonlight like captured stars. He turned to face her, and Anna's breath caught. His eyes were gold. Impossible, brilliant gold. He spoke to her in these dreams, his voice deep and resonant, carrying urgency she couldn't quite grasp. When she woke, gasping in her small room above the kitchens, the words always slipped away like water through her fingers. But the feelings remained: desperation, gratitude, warning, and something else that made her heart race in ways she couldn't name. At first, Anna tried to dismiss them. Just dreams, nothing more. Stress and exhaustion playing tricks on her mind. But they came every night, growing more vivid, more detailed. The man always tried to tell her something important, reaching toward her with a hand she could never quite touch. It was the scar that made everything real. In one dream, the man turned, moonlight illuminating a distinctive mark on his right shoulder, 3 parallel lines, as if something had once clawed deep. Anna woke with the image burned into her mind, so clear she could have drawn it. That morning, when she descended to the dungeons, her hands trembled as she approached the bars. "Can I see?" she whispered, gesturing to the wolf's shoulder. He understood immediately. Of course he did. He shifted position, revealing the thick fur of his shoulder, and Anna's world tilted sideways. There, partially hidden beneath dark gray fur, were 3 parallel scars, identical to the ones in her dream. "No," Anna breathed, backing away from the bars. "That's not possible." But the wolf's golden eyes held hers steadily, and she saw confirmation there. Recognition, as if he'd been waiting for her to understand. The dreams intensified after that. The man spoke of places with such precise detail that Anna found herself asking soldiers about them during her kitchen duties. A waterfall north of the fortress where the water ran silver in moonlight. A grove of white birch trees arranged in a perfect circle. A cliff overlooking a valley where wolves gathered under the full moon. Every location was real. Every description exact. Places Anna had never been, could never have known about. "You're not just a wolf," she whispered one evening, kneeling at the cell bars. "You're a man, trapped in this form. The silver chains, they're keeping you from changing back." The wolf moved closer to the bars than he ever had before, so close she could feel the warmth radiating from his body despite the cold stone surrounding them. He held her gaze with an intensity that made her shiver, and slowly, deliberately, he nodded. Anna's mind reeled. Werewolves were supposed to be mindless beasts, slaves to bloodlust and animal instinct, but the creature before her was neither mindless nor a beast. He was someone with a name, a past, a life stolen by those silver chains. Someone who'd somehow found a way to reach her through dreams, through a connection she didn't understand. "What are you?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Who are you?" The wolf made a sound low in his throat, frustrated by his inability to answer. In her dreams that night, the man spoke his name, but as always, the word dissolved upon waking. Only the feeling remained: nobility, power, loss, and something new, something that wrapped around her heart like a golden thread. Bond. The word appeared in her mind unbidden, carrying weight she couldn't fully comprehend. Soul bond, as if they were being tied together by forces older than the fortress, deeper than fear, stronger than the silver chains that kept him trapped. Anna lay awake as dawn approached, terrified and awed in equal measure. She'd formed a connection with something impossible, and somehow, she knew this was only the beginning. The announcement came during the morning meal, the commander's voice booming through the fortress hall with the casual authority of someone sentencing a creature, not a person. "The werewolf prisoner will be executed in 3 days. Public display, main square at dawn. Let it serve as warning to any beast that dares cross into human territory." The soldiers cheered. The kitchen workers nodded approvingly, and Anna felt the entire world collapse beneath her feet. 3 days. She made it to the storage room before her legs gave out, sliding down the wall as her vision blurred. 72 hours. That's all the time she had before they took him from the dungeons and killed him in front of a cheering crowd, before those golden eyes closed forever, before the connection that had become the most real thing in her life was severed permanently. Anna spent the first day frantically searching for solutions that didn't exist. She could beg the commander for mercy, but what orphan kitchen worker could sway a military leader? She had no influence, no leverage, nothing but desperate pleas that would only raise suspicions about why she cared. She could try to steal the keys to his silver shackles, but she didn't know where they were kept, and even if she found them, then what? He was too weak to escape alone. They'd hunt him down before he reached the forest. She could create a distraction during the execution, but the square would be surrounded by armed soldiers. She'd be caught or killed, and he'd die anyway. Every plan crumbled under the weight of reality. She was nobody. She had no power, no resources, no way to stop what was coming. The second day passed in agonizing slowness. Anna went through her duties like a ghost, her hands performing familiar tasks while her mind screamed. 48 hours, then 36, then 24. The numbers counted down in her head like a death march, each hour bringing her closer to losing the only person who'd ever truly seen her. Because that's what he was, wasn't he? Not just a wolf, not even just a trapped man. but someone who understood her loneliness, her dreams, her desperate need to matter to someone, and she couldn't tell a single soul. Couldn't share her grief or rage or terror with anyone who might help. She was utterly, completely alone. On the final night, Anna descended to the dungeons, unable to hold back her tears. She collapsed at the cell bars, burying her face in her hands as sobs racked her body. This was it. Tomorrow morning, guards would come to take him. She'd never hear his quiet sounds of acknowledgement again. Never see those golden eyes watching her with impossible understanding. "I'm so sorry," she choked out. I tried to find a way, but I can't. I don't know how to save you. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I can't." A soft sound made her look up. The wolf had moved as close to the bars as his chains allowed, his body pressed against the iron, one massive paw extended through the gap toward her. His golden eyes held hers with such intensity it stole her breath. Anna reached through the bars with trembling fingers, burying them in his fur, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. He pressed his head against her hand, and she felt something pass between them, comfort, gratitude, forgiveness, for what she couldn't do. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. The wolf made a sound low in his throat, almost like a promise. His eyes never left hers, and in their golden depths, Anna saw something that looked almost like hope, as if he knew something she didn't, as if this wasn't the end, but the beginning. Okay, pause. Can we talk about how Anna basically fell in love with what everyone else saw as a monster? And now she's got 72 hours to save him from execution? Girl is living in a historical romance novel meets werewolf thriller, and I am here for it. If you're emotionally invested at this point, and I know you are, smash that subscribe button. Because the next phase is where things get wild. Like, chains breaking, transformation happening, escape planning wild. Don't miss it. Anna remained at the bars long after her tears stopped falling, her fingers still buried in the wolf's dark fur. Dawn would come in hours. This was goodbye, though she couldn't bring herself to say the word aloud. Then she felt it, a tremor running through his entire body. What? Anna started to pull back, but the wolf pressed harder against her hand, as if anchoring himself to her touch. Another tremor came, stronger this time, violent enough that the chains rattled against stone. The silver shackles began to glow. Anna watched in horror as the metal heated, turning from dull gray to burning white. The wolf's body convulsed, and a sound tore from his throat that wasn't animal at all. It was agony given voice, raw and terrible. His fur rippled like water, his bones cracking with sounds that made Anna's stomach turn. "Stop!" she cried. "You're hurting yourself." But he couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. Something was happening that defied everything Anna knew about silver and werewolves, and what should be possible. The chains glowed brighter, burning into flesh that was changing, shifting, becoming something else entirely. The transformation was violent and wrong and beautiful all at once. Limbs elongating, reshaping, fur receding to reveal skin marked with silver burns and old scars. The wolf's powerful form compacting, reforming, becoming distinctly, impossibly human. And then, with a sound like the world breaking, the silver chains shattered. They simply exploded into pieces, fragments of glowing metal scattering across the cell floor, as if they'd never been strong enough to hold anything at all. The light died instantly, leaving only smoke and the acrid smell of burned silver and flesh. Kneeling on the cold stone, naked and trembling from the effort of what he'd just done, was a man. Anna couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She stared at him, at the black hair falling past his shoulders, marked with silver at the temples, at the powerful frame covered in sweat and blood from the silver burns, at the face from her dreams now solid and real before her. And those eyes, those impossible golden eyes looking at her from a human face with an intensity that threatened to consume her whole. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked, broken from months of disuse. It took 3 attempts before words formed. Anna. Her name and his voice made something in her chest shatter and reform simultaneously. "My name. Vincent. Vincent Nightborn." How Anna's voice failed her. "Alpha King," he continued, each word clearly an effort. "Northern werewolves. Betrayed. Captured. They wanted me to die here. Forgotten." The revelation crashed over Anna like a physical wave. Not just a werewolf. Not even just a man. A king. The ruler of an entire kingdom of his kind. 6 months. Vincent's voice grew stronger, more steady. 6 months I waited for death, accepted it, and then you came. His golden eyes held hers. You showed me kindness when no one else would. saw me as more than a monster. Your compassion. It created a bond between us. Soul bond. It gave me strength I shouldn't have. Enough to do what should be impossible. He gestured at the shattered chains, at his human form. I broke them. Through will alone. Through our connection. Anna's mind reeled. Everything she thought she knew had just been rewritten. The execution dawn is in hours. They'll come for you. I know. Vincent stood, unsteady but determined. I need to leave. Now. Get back to my kingdom. But Anna. He moved closer to the bars, and she found herself unable to look away. I can't do it alone. Not yet. I'm still weak. I need help. He extended his hand through the bars, palm up, an offering and a question all at once. Come with me. Help me escape. I know what I'm asking, you'd be abandoning everything, risking your life. But I swear to you, I will keep you safe. I will honor what you've given me. Anna stared at his hand. At this impossible choice materializing before her. Stay and be safe but lose him forever. Or risk everything for someone who'd been a wolf just minutes ago. She thought of her lonely life in the fortress, of feeling invisible and worthless, of the connection that had grown between them, deeper than logic or reason. Anna reached through the bars and took his hand. Yes. Anna ran through the fortress like her life depended on it because it did. The storage rooms were mercifully empty at this hour, and she grabbed the first guard uniform that looked close to Vincent's size, along with a heavy cloak that could hide the worst of his burns. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped everything twice. When she returned to the cell, Vincent dressed quickly despite his trembling fingers. The uniform hung slightly loose on his weakened frame, but with the cloak fastened and hood pulled low, he could pass for an injured soldier. Barely. Ready? Anna whispered. Vincent's golden eyes met hers, and he nodded. She unlocked the cell one final time, and together they stepped into the corridor. Every shadow seemed to hide a guard. Every sound made Anna's heart lurch into her throat. But the dungeons remained empty, silent, except for their careful footsteps on stone. First stroke of luck. They climbed the stairs, Vincent leaning heavily on Anna's shoulder, not entirely an act, she realized. The forced transformation had drained him. They emerged into the lower fortress halls, and Anna's breath caught. They needed to cross the inner courtyard to reach the outer gates, in the open, where anyone could see them. Act confident, Vincent murmured. People rarely question authority. They stepped into the courtyard just as a group of soldiers crossed from the opposite direction. Anna's mind went blank with terror. Then, before she could think, she called out with a voice that didn't sound like hers at all. Sharp, urgent, commanding. Make way! Grave injury. Needs the doctor immediately. The soldiers hesitated, then moved aside, murmuring concern but not questioning. Anna and Vincent kept moving, every step feeling like walking through fire. The outer gate loomed ahead, torches casting dancing shadows across its iron surface. The guard on duty looked up as they approached, his eyes narrowing. What's this, then? Medical emergency, Anna said, her voice steadier than she felt. Need to get him to the village doctor. Fortress infirmary is overwhelmed. The guard's hand moved toward his weapon. At this hour? Let me call my superior to verify. Let us pass. Vincent's voice cut through the night like a blade, carrying something beyond volume command that resonated in the bones, impossible to ignore. The guard's eyes glazed slightly, his mouth opening in confusion. But another soldier approached, one who'd been in the courtyard group. He stared at Vincent, recognition beginning to form in his expression. Something about the eyes, perhaps, or the way he held himself despite the hood. Wait, you look... Run, Vincent hissed. They bolted through the gate as the soldiers' shout of alarm split the air. Behind them, chaos erupted, voices yelling, bells beginning to ring their terrible warning. Anna's lungs burned as they sprinted into the darkness beyond the walls, the fortress coming alive with pursuit. This way, Anna gasped, veering off the main road onto a narrow path she'd explored as a child. Vincent followed without question, his breathing labored but his pace never faltering. They could hear horses being readied, soldiers mobilizing, the full might of Greystone Fortress organizing to hunt them down. Anna pushed harder, using every shortcut she knew, leading them through paths too narrow for horses. But her human endurance had limits. Her legs began to fail, her vision swimming. Without breaking stride, Vincent swept her into his arms and kept running. Even weakened, even drained from his transformation, He carried her as if she weighed nothing. Anna clung to him, feeling his heart pounding against her cheek, listening to the pursuit growing more distant. They ran until the forest swallowed them completely, until the fortress lights disappeared behind ancient trees, until even the sound of hunting horns faded to nothing. Only then did Vincent slow, stumbling into a small clearing where moonlight filtered through the canopy. He set Anna down gently, then collapsed beside her, onto the moss-covered ground. They lay there, gasping, staring up at stars neither of them had been certain they'd ever see again. "We made it," Anna whispered, barely believing the words. Vincent's hand found hers in the darkness, squeezing once. "We made it." For now, they were free, and that would have to be enough. Dawn broke over the forest in shades of gold and amber, and for the first time in months, Vincent Nightborn saw sunlight as a free man. Anna woke to find him standing at the edge of the clearing, his face tilted toward the sky, eyes closed, as if memorizing the warmth on his skin. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said softly. He turned, and the smile that crossed his face stole her breath. "I'd forgotten," he admitted, "what it felt like to stand in the sun, without silver, burning into my skin." Over the following days, Anna watched Vincent transform again, not in body, but in spirit. His strength returned gradually, his movements becoming more confident, more fluid. He hunted for them both, teaching Anna which plants were safe to eat, which streams held the cleanest water, how to read the forest's subtle signs. "This is my world," he told her one evening, as they sat by a small fire. "These forests, these mountains. My kingdom stretches from the northern peaks to the Silver River Valley. My people have lived here for centuries." Anna listened, fascinated, as he spoke of werewolf culture, their connection to the moon, their pack bonds, the complex politics of ruling creatures who valued both strength and wisdom. He spoke of the burden of leadership, of making decisions that affected thousands of lives. "It sounds lonely," Anna said quietly. Vincent's eyes found hers across the fire. "It was, until you." In turn, Anna shared pieces of herself she'd never told anyone. Her childhood memories of parents she barely remembered. The ache of growing up invisible, always on the outside looking in. Her dreams of a life that mattered, of being seen as more than just another orphan doing kitchen work. "You matter," Vincent said fiercely. "You saved a king, Anna. You showed compassion when the entire world demanded cruelty. How could you possibly think you don't matter?" The barriers between them dissolved like morning mist. Savior and saved became simply two people who understood each other's loneliness, who'd found in each other something neither had known they were searching for. 1 week into their journey, as they walked through a grove of white birch trees, the same ones from Anna's dreams, Vincent stopped abruptly. "Come with me," he said, his voice carrying a weight that made her pulse quicken. "Not just to my kingdom, but truly with me. Stay. Rule beside me. Be my queen." Anna's breath caught. "Vincent, I'm human. Your people will never. My people will see what I see." He moved closer, his golden eyes intense in the dappled sunlight. Someone brave enough to walk into a cell with a chained monster. Someone kind enough to feed him, heal him, see him when everyone else saw only a beast to be destroyed. "Anna, I'm not asking you to be something you're not. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are with me." "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing her cheeks. "But I've never been more certain of anything. You're where I belong, and I think I might be where you belong too." Anna looked into those golden eyes and saw her future. Not the lonely existence she'd imagined in some distant bakery, but something she'd never dared dream of. Home, purpose, love. "Yes," she breathed. Vincent kissed her under the birch trees, gentle and reverent, as if she were something precious he'd thought lost forever. Anna kissed him back, feeling the soul bond between them blazing bright and true, no longer a mystery but a promise. 2 days later, they reached the border of his kingdom. Werewolf patrols appeared from the trees, weapons drawn, then froze in disbelief. "My king?" one whispered, falling to his knees. Vincent's hand tightened in Anna's. "I've come home," he said simply, "and I've brought my queen." The capital of the northern werewolf kingdom rose from the forest like something from a dreamstone, buildings woven seamlessly with ancient trees, architecture that honored both civilization and wildness. When Vincent and Anna entered the main square, crowds gathered, their faces transforming from disbelief to overwhelming joy. Their king had returned, The one they'd mourned as dead stood before them, alive and whole. And at his side walked a human. The whispers started immediately. Anna felt the weight of hundreds of golden eyes assessing her, questioning her presence. She heard the murmurs. Why would their king bind himself to a human? What did she offer their people? How could someone from the species that had imprisoned him possibly be trusted? Vincent silenced them with a single raised hand. "This woman saved my life," he declared, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of an alpha. "Not once, but repeatedly. She showed me compassion when I had none. She risked everything to free me, and she is bound to me by something deeper than species or circumstance. I will hear no word against her." But Anna knew words meant little without action, so she acted. When injured werewolves came to the healers, Anna was there, learning their ways, treating wounds with the same care she'd shown Vincent in his cell. When disputes arose in council, she offered perspective that came from seeing both human and werewolf worlds. When challenges emerged, she faced them not with aggression but with the quiet strength that had carried her through years of invisibility. The werewolves watched, and slowly, grudgingly, they began to see what their king saw, someone who treated them not as monsters to fear, but as people deserving respect. Someone whose bond with Vincent was so obvious, so genuine, that even the most skeptical had to acknowledge its truth. The traitor was found within a month, Vincent's former advisor who'd orchestrated his capture. The court called for execution, for blood to answer betrayal, but Vincent, with Anna's hand in his, chose differently. "Banishment," he declared. "Permanent exile. Let him wander alone, without pack or home, and learn what it means to be truly isolated." It was mercy learned from the woman who'd shown mercy to a chained wolf. And the kingdom took note. 1 year after their return, Anna stood in the great hall wearing a gown that combined human elegance with werewolf tradition. The union ceremony brought together both cultures, human vows and werewolf bonds, spoken under the full moon that blessed all of Vincent's people. As the crown was placed on her head, as she became not just Vincent's mate but queen of the Northern Kingdom, Anna's mind drifted back to a dark dungeon cell. She remembered trembling hands pushing a tray through iron bars, remembered golden eyes that had looked at her with impossible intelligence, remembered the split-second decision to enter that cell, to reach out to something everyone else saw as a monster. That simple choice, that moment of compassion, had led to this. Had transformed an invisible orphan into a queen. Had freed a captured king. Had become a bridge between two species who'd known only hatred. Vincent's hand found hers, squeezing gently. She looked up into those golden eyes, the same eyes that had watched her from the darkness, that had held such profound gratitude when she'd brought him a blanket, that had tried so desperately to communicate through dreams. "What are you thinking?" he whispered. "That kindness is stronger than silver chains," Anna replied. "Stronger than prejudice or fear, or centuries of hatred. That one act of compassion can change everything." Vincent pulled her close, and the werewolves in the hall howled their approval, a sound that once would have terrified her but now sounded like home, like belonging, like the future they would build together. Because Anna had learned the truth that night in the dungeons, the truth she would carry as queen. Sometimes the greatest transformations don't come from magic or power. They come from choosing to see the person behind the monster. From feeding the chained wolf daily, even when no one else cares. And sometimes, if you're brave enough, if you're kind enough, those chains will shatter, and a king will rise before you, and your life will become the fairy tale you never dared imagine. So let me get this straight. Anna went from being a nobody kitchen worker feeding a monster in the dungeons to becoming the queen of the entire werewolf kingdom, married to an alpha king, and basically being the reason two species are learning to coexist. That's not just character development, that's a full transformation arc. If this story didn't make you feel all the feelings, check your pulse. And if you loved this journey from chains to crowns, from loneliness to love, from fear to forever, show this video some love. Subscribe, like, comment what your favorite moment was. Mine, honestly, it's that moment when Vincent's chains shattered. Chills. Anyway, drop your thoughts below, where you are watching from, and I'll see you in the comment section. Until then, remember, sometimes the monster isn't the one in chains, and sometimes the greatest magic is just being kind. Peace out, story lovers.